Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Where You're Planted podcast. It's me, your host, Deborah. I'm super stoked and excited to have y'all joining me for today's episode. And if you're watching on YouTube or on video, thank you so much for also tuning in to watch the videos. So stoked and excited to be doing this. It still feels a bit weird to be sitting down to actually have to get ready when I need to record this podcast episodes rather than just plopping on the couch or plopping in my office and just hitting record and going. But yeah, I've been enjoying the need to sort of get dressed and put in a little bit more effort with these episodes. So I hope you've been enjoying the videos as well. And if you're listening to the podcast and you didn't know, I've recently started uploading video episodes of the podcast too. I think if you're listening with Spotify, you can watch the videos through Spotify, but I also have uploaded the videos to a separate YouTube channel, which I will have all of those details linked in the show notes, so you can go subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also follow the podcast or watch podcast episode videos through that platform as well. Also, if you're watching on video, you'll see that I'm wearing a pink kind of like loose blouse, and it is in honor of February, which is the month of love. And I think the two episodes that I'm going to be uploading this month of February is going to focus on love and relationships and just sort of thinking about those themes. And I feel like the theme of love and doing episodes that speak to that theme is just apropos. It's just right on point. So yeah, that's what we are going to be doing. But for today's episode, though, I really wanted to focus on thinking about this idea of like why comparison feels a lot louder or seems a lot louder around like Valentine's Day. So by the time this episode is going live, it's going to be a day before Valentine's Day. So if you're listening on Valentine's Day or after Valentine's Day, happy Valentine's Day to you. But I figured that this would be an appropriate topic to talk about, just because I think the month of February has a way of amplifying things in terms of like romantic relationships, milestones, and this idea of timelines and what we feel like we should have by now. And even if like Valentine's Day isn't a big deal to you, I think I've always been the kind of person where even when I was single or even when I was like in relationships prior, I've always felt like Valentine's Day wasn't that big a deal, or I tried to convince myself that Valentine's Day wasn't that big a deal. But I think the truth is, regardless of how you feel about it, that comparison has a way of like sneaking in. So in today's episode, I really want to talk about why the sense of comparison feels a lot louder around Valentine's Day, what's really going on beneath the surface, and just how to move through this season with a little bit of steadiness and self-trust, whether or not you are in a relationship. So Valentine's Day is one of the most visibly performative holidays, I think, maybe behind like Christmas or Easter or something. Love becomes like public, and we see it like everywhere, not just on social media. It's in advertising, it's in the movies or the shows that were getting suggested on Netflix. It's in stores where decorations and whatnot are being promoted and put out. So no matter where you turn around this time of the year, there's just such visible and obvious signs of quote unquote love and how love should be celebrated and how love should be expressed. And I think social media also especially has a way of turning what to some may be a vulnerable topic into a highlight reel of, engagements, anniversaries, surprise trips, and perfectly worded captions and montages or whatever. So even if you're like happy in your own relationship and you feel like you're fairly satisfied in your own relationship, being surrounded by all of this has a way of making us like question truly whether or not we're content and happy and satisfied in our own relationships. And it can quietly trigger that question, am I behind? Is my life the way that I think it should be? Should my life look a different way than it currently does? And I think that the key point here is that comparison isn't always about wanting what somebody else has. It's about starting to question whether your life is unfolding the way that it should, whether the situations, the relationships in your life are appropriate or good for you. And I think a good example of this in my personal relationship that I'm really, really trying to be aware of and cognizant of is feeling like my relationship needs to look or feel a certain way based on what I've seen other people's relationships, how I've seen other people's relationships online. And this doesn't even need to be a thing that occurs around Valentine's Day, but I think it's just like, unfortunately, the natural consequence of living and existing within social media and having to consume other people's relationships, where even though I'm perfectly happy in my relationship, I have moments where I'm like, should my boyfriend be doing this? Should I expect them to be doing this? Should I be feeling this way about so and so? Should our relationship look a certain way? And that's kind of like a crazy thought when you like take a step back to really, really think about it. But I think what I've learned is that this feeling of comparison really rarely shows up when we're actually grounded. I think it tends to show up when there is something inside of us that feels uncertain. And I think Valentine's Day is not merely about, relationships and love. I think Valentine's Day is about what relationships symbolize, stability, desirability, being chosen, and this sense or image of having your life figured out. So when we compare ourselves, or when we find this feeling of comparison starting to creep in around Valentine's Day, I don't think it's not longing for a better relationship or a partner. I think it might be longing for some sort of reassurance. And I think the best way to sort of exemplify this is back when I was single, Valentine's Day was just always like a reminder of how much maybe my life would feel better if I was in a relationship. And I think that just sort of goes back to the point, because at that point in my life, I hadn't really clocked how important it is to have a strong and grounded foundational sense of self and self-trust and love. And so I was seeking reassurances through other people, or like through this idea of being a girlfriend. Really, I think for me, Valentine's Day would always remind me that I am not someone's girlfriend and someone has not yet chosen me, and that means I'm not desirable enough or worthy of pursuing. But that's not like true. So for me, in the past, Valentine's Day has just always been this season that just brings up lots of insecurities around like where I feel like I should be in life, but I'm just not there yet. And then seeing it celebrated in media, in any form of media, even in like the lives of my friends, would just bring with it a sense of like just being unmoored and feeling like I'm so behind, and what can I do to get back on track. It's such a weird feeling, just this need to feel like I need to be in a relationship to find meaning, a purpose in my life. And I think once I was able to shift that mindset, my attitude and comparison around Valentine's Day started to shift. And I'm not saying that right now I'm perfect, and I'm not. So I never compare myself or my relationship, but I think it's like so much better because within myself, I've found that sense of meaning, right? That I can look to. And that is the thing that grounds and anchors me, and not just being pulled around essentially by other people's manifestations of love, if that makes sense. And I think another thing that Valentine's Day does is that it reinforces this idea of a universal timeline, and that everyone sort of needs to be on that path. That there's, but the truth is, there is no universal timeline for partnership, for marriage, for financial security, for emotional readiness. But despite the fact that there's no universal timeline for any of these things, we seem to absorb that idea into us, into our psyches nonetheless. And when life doesn't pan out a certain way, we internalize that as some sort of failure, instead of it just us just understanding that, my path is just different. That just kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how in the past, Valentine's Day would always remind me of how, I'm like 25 or whatever, and I'm not in a serious relationship, because when I was 15, I thought that at 25 I would be married. But at 25, I was definitely not even close to that. And for good reason too, because I was not emotionally ready, even though I felt like I was not emotionally ready. I had not dealt with my trauma, to really fully get into a partnership and be able to show up in the way that relationships require of you. And now that I am in a committed relationship, and it's a loving relationship, and I feel like I've done so much work through therapy and inner child work to get to the point where I'm actually a good partner in a relationship. There are sometimes when it's hard. There are sometimes when it's just so difficult, right, to be the person that you need to be. So this idea of you having to follow a certain timeline based on some arbitrary societal rule or expectation makes no sense. And it's also like in the same vein when you like start to think about marriage and stuff. And I think like Valentine's Day and like this month of February and the season and celebration of love is also an opportunity for a lot of people to make marriage proposals. And that's like amazing for them, especially if that's their own path that they're taking, that's their own timeline. I'm also like trying to rid myself of this expectation that marriage has to happen at a certain time. I think obviously there are discussions and conversations about like how long do you want to date someone, how, like when but I have long since abandoned the idea of I have to be married by this age, I have to have children by this age, because guess what? You can plan and plan and plan, but oftentimes fate and life and destiny, the universe has like a different idea of how life is going to pan out, and all you have to do is plan as much as you can, do what's within your control, but just kind of relinquish the rest and just enjoy life for what it is. I feel like I went on a little bit of a segue there, but that's like, it's important to me to, as often as I can, reinforce to people that are listening and to reinforce to myself that the idea of a universal timeline makes no sense, and you need to be able to be flexible and adaptable, have a general sense of where you want your life to go, but be like water and just kind of go with the flow at the same time. And then I think another thing that often happens during the season, and it doesn't even need to be during the season, but it's sort of like a pervasive effect of the times that we live in, is social media has a way of not just showing us love, but showing us a polished version of love, where when you see that person's perfectly curated photos of their relationship, or that cute reel of this person being loved on by their partner or whatever, what you're not seeing is them having to set up the camera to take the video. When you start to think of like the behind the scenes and everything, all the setup that has to go to making a short form video, it kind of breaks the spell a little bit. But what you also don't see, and that you're not really privy to, is the conversations that happen behind the scenes, the things that don't go according to plan, the fights, the disagreements, the awkward moments, other tender moments that are just maybe not very appropriate to capture and share for general public use. Those are the things that we do not see, and I feel like those are the things that make a relationship a relationship. Love in its truest form and manifestation is not polished. It's not straightforward. It's not clean, it's oftentimes messy, it's oftentimes confusing, and the person that you fall in love with will oftentimes aggravate you. But social media does not always show us that. And so sometimes we can internalize what we're not seeing to mean that if any of that shows up in our own relationship, that we must not be in a good relationship. But that's not true. So I guess the moral of the story is that when it comes to social media and consuming other people's version of love, consume with discretion, because you don't know what's being left out of the story. You don't know what's being left out of the picture. The worst thing you'd want to do is to compare your inner world, your relationship, your love life to someone else's marketing. So all of that's just great and good, but I think I can also offer some practical ways that we can move through this season gently, in a way that nurtures and sort of holds us during a time that may truly be difficult for some of us, for some people that are struggling with loneliness and being singlehood, when deep down you know that what you want is a relationship. And I'm saying this from someone that has been there, someone that has spent many Valentine's days or many months of February seeing other people's love, seeing other people's expressions of love, and feeling a strong pang of loneliness, jealousy, and just questioning about where in my life did I go wrong and why I want that and why is it that I don't have it. So here are some of the things that I can share with you that may help you get through this season a little bit more gently and easier. So I think number one is to name comparison as soon as it shows up. And like when you're comparing yourself or your love life or your relationship or lack thereof to other people. And I think once you're aware of that, it breaks that spell. Once you're aware that this is what I'm doing, it breaks that spell. And because you bring a bit of logic and reason to it, it's like you don't know what's going on behind the scenes of those people's lives. You don't know what timelines they're on. You don't know what they did to get to where they're at. They're not you, you're not them, and your relationship or lack thereof is not a signifier of your worth, and you're still loving and desirable with or without, having quote unquote love in your life. The second thing that you can do is to limit exposure to accounts and people that may trigger this sense of comparison. And I think it's so okay and important to be able to mute certain accounts, to be able to unfollow certain people. Maybe it's just like for the month of February, I don't know, maybe longer. And I think that's a form of self-care, and that's a form of self-respect. It's like what these people are it's like these accounts and what they post or whatever, they're not doing it from like a place of malice or just trying to be mean and just sharing their lives. But you have to take responsibility for how that makes you feel and take steps to address that. And that may mean really, honestly, just muting some accounts, unfollowing some people, and that's okay. And also during this time, I think it's important to learn to anchor into what feels stable in your life. That may be friends, that may be routines, that may be work, your hobbies, it may be your faith, it may be being out in your community. Do things that, I suppose in a way, take your mind away from the season and the month of love or what it is that you're missing. Focus instead on what it is that you have in your life and the things that bring you joy. I think another thing you can do is to redefine what love means to you right now. Take this as an opportunity to exercise, like do like a journaling exercise, like what does love mean to me? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And how will I know when I have it, or that I have it? Is this version of, if you're in a relationship, is the version of love that I'm getting right now, is it what I want? If it is what I want, how can you be grateful and appreciative of that and try to get more of it? So taking the time to really reflect on what love looks like and feels like for you right now in this moment. And then I think this probably particularly, I think this is probably also really relevant for anyone in a relationship or not a relationship. You can also use this season as like an information gathering venture. So if something is feeling tender, I think that's a great opportunity to investigate. It's like, why am I feeling this way about this topic? Is it because, yes, I'm single and I'd love to get in a relationship, but I'm not getting there. And so the idea of seeing other people celebrate love is just a bit triggering. Maybe that means that you still have to do some work in terms of loving yourself and focusing on other aspects of your life, rather than making the idea of being in a relationship like central to you and your personality. I think it's just like a great opportunity to do a bit more digging and to go more inwards to figure out like what's going on here. If you're in a relationship, it also could be the opportunity you need to like figure out like, why is other people's expression of love triggering me, even though like I'm ostensibly in a relationship? Is there something that I'm missing in my relationship that I could work on? Am I denying some truths about my relationship because I don't want to cause myself or somebody else pain? So I think it's a good time to discover the need that is probably being, that our subconscious is trying to nudge us toward. So if Valentine's Day feels a little bit heavy this year, I want you to know that nothing has gone wrong. You're not behind. You're not missing the point of life. You're not doing this life thing wrong. I think comparison gets louder when we're in between versions of ourselves. And I think that's a very human place to be. So my thing is, be gentle with yourself this month. Your life is seriously unfolding in ways that you can't really fully see or understand or envision yet. And I think what's going to come out on the other side of it would have been so worth the wait. So yeah, thank you so much for spending the last half hour or so with me today. I really appreciate you being here. If you wanted to connect with me on other social platforms, I will have everything linked in the show notes. Just wanted to wish y'all a happy Valentine's Day once again, if you do celebrate it. But until next time, thank you so much for being here and take care. Bye.